lot of reactions from a guy called Ron Paul, who is both my number one fan and my number one critic.
I'm trying hard to do it, and I take my time, it just doesn't work out the way I want it to. It's like I concentrate real hard, it just doesn't work out. Everything I do and everything I try.
And instead of intersectionalism or Marxism, wanting veganism to be attached to libertarianism. Specifically, he has a eccentric view of ecological libertarianism, which is interesting to talk about in some ways, because I think one of the clearest weaknesses of libertarianism is exactly its relationship to ecology.
I go, no, it's okay, you know, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out, you know.
The vast majority of libertarians, like anarcho-capitalists, will just say, well, if it's your private property, you can do whatever you want with it. Well, if you buy a piece of land and cut down all the trees, this is a problem. You know, they're just obvious issues of regulations and government paternalism, government oversight, and intervention that come up under the heading of ecology, and they come up with these too. Anyway, that's his approach. That's interesting. If you're just talking about, you know, people on the internet and the distorted view of the world we get to the internet, you might think this sounds like a viable approach or what have you. It's not. And it's not for the same reasons that I've been talking about just now. We come from a culture, anyone who speaks English, anyone in the modern Western world, we come from a culture and an era that reviews, a culture and an era that treats rebelliousness as a positive trait in and of itself. And people slip into the assumption very easily that veganism is a revolutionary movement, simply because you challenge one aspect of veganism. Well, veganism isn't, and you make veganism weaker by attaching to rebellious or revolutionary. For the same reasons, look, a campaign to end cigarette smoking is not inherently rebellious or revolutionary. A campaign to save the whales or any other pragmatic, you know, habitat-related, wilderness-related single issue like that, it doesn't get stronger by associating itself with radical politics or rebellious or revolutionary politics. If you know, whatever, let's use the example, there are 7 dolphins left in a certain stretch of the river, you're trying to preserve that habitat, save this endangered species. No other example. Monkeys are left, very small patch of habitat, last few families of the species of monkey, etc. The last thing you're going to want to do is, let's say you organize your 5 friends who care about this specific issue. The last thing you're going to want to do is to hitch your cart to some obscure radical philosophy, whether it's Marxism or intersectional feminism or libertarianism. This is not pragmatic. If you have 5 people together, you're trying to change the local bylaws about cigarette smoking where you live, you're trying to get an anti-smoking campaign running, which in some parts of Europe is still a really necessary goal. Depending where you live, that may all be the past tense, but there's some places where that's still a big struggle to reduce the use of tobacco. However many people you have involved at the beginning, 5 people, 10 people, whatever, say, okay, we're going to form this anti-smoking committee, anti-smoking campaign. The worst thing you could do is say, we're only going to let people join who are intersectional feminists, or we're only going to let people join who are libertarians, or we're only going to participate with, and we're going to try to infiltrate the local libertarian party. So, in a sentence, the problem with digital veganism in this respect, the problem with the internet view of the world, is that people come to regard weakness as strength. People think that defining yourself more narrowly in connection to one's political causes makes veganism stronger, and it doesn't. And why is that? This is part of the world of likes and thumbs up and all kinds of things. I mean, yes, if you have an obscure blog, and instead of just being vegan, you identify with any one of these tiny political parties, your blog may now get more attention, more comments, more fan mail, more thumbs up, more viewers on YouTube. This is taking an incredibly small and political movement and making it even smaller and weaker. On that scale, this kind of factionalism is rewarded. You can get a niche market, a niche viewership that grows very easily. And probably someone like a generally privileged vegan, she identified with, I don't know, some of the most far out. She took on a certain ideological pose that got her a lot of attention from non-vegans. And I think she found that very rewarding. You know, whatever. I'm happy for her. I certainly have some criticism on this channel, but, you know, whatever. For an individual person who has that experience of, okay, look, this ideology took my channel from obscurity to a certain level of attention globally. Let's say it's Marxism. Any of these people, or anarchism. Anarchism, still, you know, I don't see many vegan channels that are sincerely interested in anarchism. What I tend to see are vegans who flirt with the faded memory of the role anarchism and ALF had 20 years ago in animal rights. And then I think they seem to lose interest, maybe because the reality of the ALF is like today, or the reality of anarchism and the ecology vegan thing, I don't know. But for right now, that seems to be out of fashion of style. But obviously, it's easy to imagine that fashion of style. And, so again, whatever, your blog, your YouTube channel, if you identify with anarchism or Marxism, that could easily bring you more, you know, another 10,000, viewers. But it is alienating you from exactly the people who could actually support your movement organization in your city or your town now to actually accomplish something worthwhile. Now, again. Whatever you think of as the example of local activity organization, I've had many examples on this channel. This guy in London, Violent Vegan, is trying to organize a vegan hot dog shop. A hot dog stand is a form of outreach. And of course, it's hard to find people to work with. Anyway, so to say, not all political organization activism is about a street protest. So, in technology, people talk about the difference between the early adopters of the technology and the mass market. who happens to be the type of person who tries something out when it's new and unreliable and expensive, as opposed to the potential for something to reach millions of people. Veganism, this is one of the problems. People like me are, in a sense, early adopters. The colorful cast of characters of eccentrics who quit their jobs and drop out of university to start a YouTube channel to show off, them riding a bicycle and wearing a bikini, they are early adopters. And the question is where you live, who is the mass market? That's point one. Point two, so one of the criticisms I've received is some people think I'm praising the Green Party of Canada. And on the contrary, I have said nothing but kind of scorn and derision of the Green Party of Canada. I'm incredible over the Green Party of Canada. I think it's garbage. But I raise it as an example to show the level of organization that vegans have not yet even achieved. And I've raised this example in contrast to saying, like, well, if you really think there's hope for the future through this or that vegan organization, let's compare how far it's come to the Green Party. I'm not a critical fan of the Green Party. On the contrary, I've said repeatedly, the Green Party of Canada, one of the things I despise about it is they actively support the milk and dairy industry, where they want the government to give more money to support the milk and dairy. They want more subsidies. And, this stupid nationalistic rhetoric of the government has to protect the Canadian dairy industry against the American dairy industry, as if somehow milk made in America is more evil than milk made in Canada. It's idiotic, and it's an excuse for graft of the worst kind. And nobody in the Green Party is addressing the question of the actual suffering of the cows, or any of the ethical and ecological reality. So anyway, I just say, anyone who thinks I'm a fan of the Green Party, you're missing the point of why I have mentioned it in the previous video. Nevertheless, the Green Party for this video, once again, is significant. There's a contrast between early adopters and the mainstream market, mainstream audience. There's a contrast between the political splinter groups, the radicals, the internet, and the political mainstream wherever you live. It can be very different things. But the reality of an organization of the Green Party is that it's based on another type of public, another type of constituency. When I was involved in the Green Party Canada many years ago, the reality was the party only existed because of a small number of retired people who donated, let's say, $100 a month. It's not even stereotypical to say they're retired. These were elderly people who, got involved in ecology in the 1960s and 1970s and who were convinced that the Green Party had some legitimacy in Canada and who reached into their pension and donated $100 a month. A very small number of those people were providing the financial lifeline on which the Green Party existed. They were desperately needed. That was the core constituency. And the Green Party Canada, as I mentioned, is kind of a failure in many ways. They were also spoiled by this because those donors, that particular political constituency, they didn't expect anything in return. If you gave them a leaflet once a year in the mail, they'd be happy and they go, okay, well, hey, I gave them $100 and now I've got this worthless leaflet, this little, few-page piece of paper updating me on what the Green Party has done during the last 12 months. And in reality, the party would have done nothing, or almost nothing. They had a meeting. I remember talking to the man who was the leader of the Green Party, the federal Green Party at that time. Again, this is years and years ago. And he was talking about getting, a Green Party youth organization. And he was hopeless, this guy. I mean, I might as well be talking about a brick wall. He was an idiot. I was saying to him, look, young people have other things to do. What you're talking about, what he was imagining, it's going to take up a lot of their time and money. And what are you offering in return? What's rewarding about this or what's gratifying about this? So you don't even have a magazine for them to contribute to or something. If somebody publishes an article in a magazine and their name is on it and maybe their photo is on it, even if there's no money back for something like the Green Party, for an ecological organization, that can be really rewarding. I don't know, if your magazine is good enough, maybe the person lists it on their CV. I mean, there are things any political organization can do that rewards participation. And at that time, the Green Party was doing none of them. I said, you're imagining, the green youth as if they're going to line up to give you their time and their money when you're offering absolutely nothing in return. I was having that conversation with him in a genuinely helpful tone of voice. Unlike the tone of voice I just used now, but it was completely useless. That guy was so... So look, this is the final gap I want to talk about here, is the gap between digital vegans and the people who are their potential patrons, politically speaking, in any given city, wherever it is in the world. YouTube does not show me those people. YouTube does not show me the grandmothers who are sitting at home who would write a check and donate to support the Green Party, or who would donate to support a vegan party, a vegan cause of some kind, if you had an organization doing advocacy for any particular issue under the heading of veganism. Again, whether it's Save the Whales or Save the River or setting up a hot dog stand. Who are those people, and how do you reach out to them, those grandmothers writing the checks? And that'll be different. It's different in Spain, it's different in Germany, it's different from one city to another in Canada. It's different in Montreal from Vancouver. Who are those people and how do you reach them? I can tell you one thing for goddamn sure. You are going to alienate those people. You are not going to reach those people. You are not going to earn their trust or support by identifying yourself with Marxism, libertarianism, intersectional feminism, or any other radical political ideology that only provides vegans with the ego trip of being rebellious, of being revolutionary, of being anti-establishment. It's the ego trip that, putting on a black mask and calling yourself an anarchist, well, what the fuck really changes? When you take off the mask and look in the mirror at the end of the day, you're the same person. And you've now destroyed your credibility with the only constituencies that actually care about you and sympathize with what you're trying to accomplish in the long term. So this is part of the blinding phenomenon of taking a political movement on the internet. In the past, there were other problems. When political movements relied heavily on magazines, only a certain type of person would be getting articles into the magazine. It would normally just be people who lived in New York or just people who lived in Toronto, in the centers, who were involved with, political publications, and you wouldn't hear anything from maybe the majority of people who lived in more remote areas, not only remote, smaller cities, suburbs, what have you. There have always been distorting biases at this time in political organization. The dissidents who were criticizing communism in Moscow in the 1980s, they were almost all moneyed intellectuals in Moscow, and you weren't hearing from, the peasants of the surrounding area. Those were the people who had access access to public internet. So these are fundamental patterns in political science. But the internet blinds us as never before as to who our audience is and what our potential is to make a positive difference.
The new student. Come closer.
You cannot see.
You think I cannot see?
Of all things, to live in darkness must be the worst.
Fear is the only darkness. Take your broom and strike me with it. Do as I tell you. Strike. Again. Here, catch. Never assume that because a man has no eyes, he cannot see. Close your eyes. What do you hear?
I hear the water. I hear the birds.
Do you hear your own heartbeat?
No.
Do you hear the grasshopper, which is at your feet?
Old man, how is it that you hear these things?
Young man, how is it that you do not?
Sometimes I try to do things, and it just doesn't work out the way I want it to. And and I get real frustrated. And like, I try hard to do it, and I like take my time, but it just doesn't work out